Welcome back to the much delayed and now utterly brilliant Jim Burns Day podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Nice to be here.
You know, it's a big day. Well, actually, when you listen to it, it'll be the day after the big day.
Yes, yeah.
So,
although it does explain some things as to why it's taken us ages to do a second podcast, why we haven't done any fucking videos yet.
yeah, pretty much.
But so we've launched our actual business, as we said on Twitter before. Jim Burns Day is our side project, a passion project, if you will.
Yeah.
But our actual business is a production company, and it's Special Gun Productions.
Sorry, what was that, Jim?
Special Gun.
Wow.
Special Gun, all one word. So specialgunproductions.com if you want to know anything about
You sound like an American pitchman now. That's Special Gun, Special Gun, Special Gun.
But Special Gun is a video production company, and if you want some videos done, just give us a call. But
no weddings.
No weddings.
We're not into weddings. We
are available for bar mitzvahs and funerals, though.
Yes, funerals definitely. They're a barrel of laughs, mate.
Well, do you know what, mate? If the price is right, I'll do a fucking wedding. No worries. So that, I hope that explains why it looks like we've been sitting doing fuck all, but
trust me, we haven't.
It's been long days, but we're very excited.
So you'll be the first to know as soon as we got any kind of short films going or any kind of little projects like that.
But as we say, all the YouTube stuff we want to do, the film focused YouTube channel, stuff about history, all that stuff is still in the pipeline. We're still doing it. It's just, it unfortunately can't be our focus.
Yeah.
But it is one of our focuses.
There will still be stuff, and I think we wanted to have the production company. I think we would have wanted it to have been revealed closer, but then best laid plans and all of that. Suddenly you're into stuff where something gets in the way. You need to do something before something else can happen. So yeah, it's we've not just been sitting around, but these things take a little bit of time to get right. And hopefully we have at the moment. So yeah, I think with the production company as well. Yeah, I think stuff that you kind of stuff that you may know us for. But also Dave's here now, so film stuff, and hopefully all that's coming down the pike. So enough about that.
Yeah. And
let's move questions. Now these questions, I like these questions. These are some good ones, and then we're going to kick off with the best one.
That's good. Should we just a little note about the format of the podcast? 'Cause I don't think we made it quite clear in the first one.
Talking a load of shit.
Well, we field questions as many podcasts do, but the whole thing is directed by you, basically. That this is what this boils down to. So we essentially base the theme on what we've been asked and just see what flows. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. So. What's the
dynamite first question you've been asked?
Well, the dynamite
Jim?
first question was, do you condition first or afterwards? Can't actually remember who asked it now.
No, but lost the time, but I'm sure they'll remind us. So it's a great question because it really underlines who you can and cannot trust. Anyone who shampoos last. I'm not talking about a double shampoo. I'm talking about a straight conditioner, then shampoo. They need to
just cut them out of your life. I think.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like Godfather 2 style.
It's not how you do these things.
You're off on a little fishing trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly, the sun can't come, but it's all right. My bodyguard, who's also my enforcer, will go out with you. Yeah. I know we've been having a few problems, but I'm sure there's nothing wrong can come of this. Oh look, there's a big storm. Oh no. So that's what you need to do. Jim, you've actually got some really good insight into...
Well, I mean, I used to be a man who had very long hair. So it used to be down way past my shoulders, down to my elbow at one point.
I was really hoping you were going to say you're a shampoo model or something.
So, I mean, the mantra was wash, rinse, repeat. And you always repeat. Because the first shampoo it just kind of... It doesn't really get everything out. The first shampoo is
it's the first nuke, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the primer.
Nuke. It's the primer. Never go one nuke, mate. Go two. Let them know you mean fucking this.
Yeah, you have to make sure you vaporise the fillings in the teeth. The first shampoo just gets the kind of the outer grime. The second shampoo is like a deep clean, and then you condition. And then when you condition, you then do the rest of your showering, so the condition has time to sit there and really moisturise the hair and condition it. So. that's how you should wash your hair. And if it's particularly dirty, do 3 shampoos then a condition. Like, you know, that there's no object.
So the lesson of this week is ask better questions, otherwise you get lectured shit like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was a very good question. And I even do it now that I don't have long hair, because it's just best practice, frankly.
Best practice is the amount of fucking non-best practice in this entire setup, Jim. You're lecturing us on best practice of fucking hair washing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well,
you can fucking lecture people on buying watches or whatever Tory shit you've been up to if you want.
Buying a watch isn't Tory.
It fucking is, mate.
What are you talking
It's
about?
not a Casio, is it?
Yeah.
Listen.
The last watch I ever bought was probably in the 90s, and I think it was like probably in like Ingliston Market in Edinburgh, and it was 15 quid, and it had a calculator on it.
Yeah,
That's not the free one in the
some of
Happy
those,
Meal, wasn't it?
some of those are design classics, but away from being accused of
Design
being
class. You can't.
Get back right. You can fuck off the Charles Worthington podcast, you fucking twat. Right. So this is a really good question. I think it's one of my favourites so far. I mean, in general, not just in terms of this, because obviously it's the best
It
question.
doesn't have much to beat so far.
What are your favourite movie remakes and why? And that's from @DrewFox81. So this one is interesting because a lot of people consider remakes to be stuff that are in fact just adaptations. Mm-hmm. So there is, and the most famous, I think, or one of the most famous remakes of all time is the 82 version of The Thing, which is also kind of maybe straddles that line because there's a literary base, and then there's Thing from Another World, and then there's The Thing. But I think everyone just considers it to be a remake rather than an adaptation.
And it
because
flies
it's so
on the convention
different.
of what you
Yeah.
consider to be remakes because it's better than what came before it.
Oh, it's
weird,
insanely good, and one of those films that's so good that when it came out, everyone fucking hated it, and that's when you know you've made a really good movie.
Like Blade Runner, right? Everyone hated Blade Runner when that came out.
Oh, this is a load
That
of
got
shit.
a load of shit reviews, and now it's just like it's a timeless classic.
Yeah, some of the Terminator reviews as well.
Yeah.
And Taxi Driver, as we know from the Outlaw director's commentary, when Nick Love says that got fucking cunted when it was came out. Everyone's like, I'm not sure Outlaw is in quite the same bracket as.
That got fucking cunted when it came out.
But, I mean,
Is that Danny Dyer?
Danny Dyer and Nick Love on their Outlaw.
I was in a Danny Dyer film called Pimp, and that got cunted when it came out. So maybe that's just waiting to become listed as a cult classic.
I mean, EastEnders is getting cunted all the time now, isn't it? So, I mean, I'm just trying out a pen now. Remember when he had a feud with Mark Kermode?
Yeah. I will say one thing about Nick Love and director's commentary. It is amazing. It's up there with the best of all time because it seems, to quote Kermode in his book, Jolby talks about it, that they are in a state of advanced refreshment, which is my favourite euphemism for being fucking smashed. And he gives an impassioned defence of the movie, which is his movie, fair enough. And some of it is actually quite funny. When he talks about all film critics have been knocked back from fucking Vertigo or whatever, they're about 3,000 years old or whatever. He says, like, yeah, some of that, there's a little bit of truth, I think, in some of that. But anyway, right, fucking forget about Outlaw. I don't know why we're here, but The Thing is a classic, is a film where I think that, as you said, Dave, its remake credentials, it went in a completely different direction, kept the same nucleus of the idea. They're out, some shit goes bad in the Antarctica thing, and then you just take it from there. But
I think another one that sits alongside that in terms of being better than the original and certainly more famous is Scarface.
Yeah, Scarface is one of those ones that not many people realise it's a remake, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I think because it was so of its time as well. It was kind of the height of that. White kind of suits and firing about Miami, spending all the fucking cocaine money. I mean, that's very of its time. So it's difficult to conceive of that being a remake of something. So
yeah, it's one of the ones that you brought up in our discussion about this, Dave, was Assault on. We'll get back to Scarface in a second, but Assault on Precinct 13 being an update, basically, of Rio Bravo, and from taking that central idea and transporting it somewhere else, there's and this is where I think saying something is a hard or definite remake of something sometimes it's difficult to pin down, because where do you start with Star Wars and Hidden Fortress and the rest of that sort of influences?
Of course, every movie's influenced by other things.
But Scarface, I think, I once talked to someone who is a very intelligent man, which made him the only one of the two, and he was like, no, I don't like Scarface because it's too 80s. And I was like, of all the fucking movies to get worried, it's an Oliver Stone movie.
Have you seen Weird Science? You can.
It's just Brian De Palma directed it. Oliver Stone wrote it. It was made in 1983 or came out in 83. It stars Al Pacino just as he's crossing into the shouty Al Pacino. What? Of course, it's the most 80s movie that's ever been made. And you just think, but I like that. It's dated, but it as a snapshot into just supreme decadence. Of that
A personal favourite of mine is Birdcage, which is a lesser-known film, Robin Williams comedy, absolutely brilliant, based on a French film, as is 12 Monkeys, based on Leggett. That's I guess a reimagining rather than a
I
remake.
think so. Chris Marker, I think, directed Leggett, and 12 Monkeys obviously kind of takes it and makes it a bit more palatable for the studios, as in it does have moving pictures in it. Whereas the original is just a series of stills which run for so long that your brain starts to make the moves
Stitch them together. Well, that's what movie making is. Anyway.
Yeah, but in this, you get a third or 2/3 of the way through, and your brain starts to be tricked into, because it's so used to seeing images run together, and then when you just see stills for so long, that it starts to pin all that together.
I always wondered what happened when the producer received the fucking brief for 12 Monkeys on their desk. If it was 12 monkeys, can we not just get the one? Can we not just get one monkey and 11 hats?
This is why you're not a Hollywood producer. I can't wait. You're doing some good pitching for our production company.
Mate, if I was a Hollywood producer, I wouldn't have made fucking 12 monkeys, and most of them didn't.
I really like 12 Monkeys.
No, it's great, but it's just the most unbankable film of all time.
Well, it starred Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So it's not
Brad Pitt, fair enough, but before he was Brad Pitt.
He's
big.
He wasn't.
Is that 95,
he
96?
wasn't fucking
He wasn't.
Brad Pitt.
Are you joking?
He hadn't been Detective David Mills yet in Seven, which is obviously...
He was
launched his career.
somewhere between Thelma and Louise Brad Pitt and Seven Brad Pitt. So he wasn't Brad Pitt.
I think you're wrong there.
He was just Brad Pitt.
That's one of the many.
I think you're quite wrong.
One of the 12.
And
Bruce Willis hasn't been bankable since fucking 1989.
That's absolutely not true at all. Do you
All right, 1999. Listen,
no, fuck off. What was it? Unbreakable? Who's in that one, right?
that was his last actual bankable film.
I think if we
wasn't
go by the numbers, he's probably done all right. But an obvious one when we're talking about remakes is Heat, which is almost a direct remake.
It's a remake of that GTA 4 level, right?
It's just a straight remake of that and GTA 5's Michael campaign stitched together. Remake of LA Takedown, which Michael Mann directed, which I think was going to be the pilot of a TV show, which became like a TV movie. And one of the great things about LA Takedown is it's so similar. It's there are the scenes where Al Pacino and Robert De Niro's characters are sitting in that coffee shop, but they're not played by Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and they are sitting across a tiny table with like a checkered tablecloth on it. Whereas in Heat, they're at the end, they're sitting by this massive chrome monstrosity, and it's all shot reversed, everyone's trying to.
A diner needs to look like it was built by an American, so just no concern whatsoever for space. Just
But those remakes of
their cars don't even turn properly. They don't have to.
What I love about America is, and this, and some of their old muscle cars from the 70s, is that the cars are really bad at turning, but it's on a grid system. So it's just making it so difficult for anything to work. Thanks, America.
Yeah.
But with Heat, what I love about it is one of those where the director had that original idea, had the vision, and then went, right, actually, we're going to do it just bigger and better. And I think a lot of people talk about unnecessary remakes and remakes that are just...
there are lots and lots of unnecessary remakes, but these are ones that...
But these are the ones that take it and just go, right, we're gonna
just spin it in a different direction. I don't get why you try to tell the same story in exactly the same way. It's like, well, that film exists already.
Yeah, money though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Jim, you've got...
there are there are necessary remakes or justifiable remakes. When people watch The Raid and think, this would be better in Mega City 1.
Starring a much...
Starring fucking Bones McCoy. Yeah, I mean, it's weird as that, because you stretch the definition of remake to talk about like another adaptation of the same thing. You could talk about War of the Worlds or whatever. You could talk about people compared the Stallone Dredd movie to the Karl Urban Dredd movie a lot when it came out. It seemed to be, and it seemed to be a very, very strange comparison, because it's going back to the same, it's drawing from the same source material, from the same well, but it's a completely different era, completely different. Because between the Stallone movie and the Karl Urban movie, you had the entire superhero movie revolution, which went through all the motions from like Bryan Singer's X-Men to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and then the Marvel universe exploding. So like the entire,
and even Blade just after, so 95 for Dredd and 98 for Blade.
I mean, like the entire kind of bankability, the entire landscape for superhero movies. Well, it became that superhero movies would have been like, oh, they're making a movie out of that comic. That's okay. Whereas now, when a movie isn't based on a fucking comic, it's a massive surprise. So, those films occurred in completely different worlds, serving completely different audiences, and yet they were compared directly.
I think it's natural to compare them if they're starring the same, but it certainly does not class as a remake in any. Like you wouldn't say James Cameron's Titanic was a remake of the previous Titanic just because it dealt with the same subject matter.
The one with Catherine Zeta-Jones. Yeah, absolutely.
James Cameron's Titanic is just a fucking remake of Aliens, but the nuke that's going to go off, or the processing plant, is just an iceberg.
Every
Billy Zane's the alien
James Cameron film since Aliens has been a remake of Aliens. Fucking Avatar was a shit remake of Aliens.
So just very quickly on the Stallone Judge Dredd, so it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I actually quite like some of the production elements. The ABC Warrior Robots, whatever, I thought that scene where the guy gets fucking his arms ripped off, and it's got Armando Santa in it, so which is great to always see him going full fucking psycho, like, yeah, I'm just going to run around now and cloning that. Fuck everyone else.
I actually kind of thought as well, if you want to compare the sort of the looks of the films to the look or the various looks the comic has had, but it's a very British comic. It's got a very British art style.
Yeah.
And I think the
That's
Stallone
right,
movie,
Robocop, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. But I think the Stallone movie, oddly enough, gets the look a bit closer to what was in
the uniforms as well,
2000
in particular at that time.
Even though I think, for a live action production, the Karl Urban film does it better.
Yeah.
So it's better. It's a better adaptation, a better interpretation of what Mega City 1 is. But if you want to talk about if you want to talk about authenticity, the Stallone movie actually gets it right in terms of its visuals. But it's interesting though. I'd love to see. There's often a rumor about, and it's never anywhere near being true. But there's often a rumor and a desire for like someone like Netflix to pick up Judge Dredd as a series. I think that'd be fucking incredible.
And they would lever the fucking cash into it as well.
Exactly.
It would open like Narcos with Mega City 1 in full release.
Daredevil is magnificent that they made.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
and it's
brilliantly put together.
It's really well good. But yeah, I mean, on the subject of is it a remake or isn't it? I mean, I would argue that Independence Day is basically War of the Worlds.
No, but that's an adaptation.
That's an adaptation.
That's not a fucking remake, is it?
But as far as it's drawing on the same ideas and the same wellspring again as the 50s kind of War of the Worlds movie. It's taking that story, adapting it for the contemporary era. So it's like all the same ideas essentially reimagined for a new property.
Just more.
I don't love it, but I do like that about it. It's one of those. It seems very obvious to be like, oh, well, it's just a remake of War of the Worlds, or an adaptation. But when you're a kid, like I was, seeing it in the cinema often, like I was like 11 or 12 years old, is that not when you give a shit about fucking War of the Worlds or what Richard Burton's fucking been up to, you're like, man, this has just got Will Smith in it, and it's got these cool aliens. I'll tell you one thing before we get off the subject of remakes is that we've talked a lot about what is and isn't a remake. One of my I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite movies, one of the most interesting movies I think I've seen in a long, long time is American Gigolo, which we talk about the 80s. Fuck me. The movie that kicked off the 1980s. directed by Paul fucking Schrader, and it's got a Giorgio Moroder soundtrack, and it starts with Richard Gere head to toe Armani in a black convertible Mercedes driving along to "Call Me," and the rest of this, like some of the refrains and stuff in the score is just like the main part of "Call Me," but rendered in a different. It's just like
There's loads of synth.
Yeah, loads of synth stuff. Like, but it's really like in the remake stuff. I think Schrader's talked about how we watched Pickpocket, I think, by Bresson, and he really wanted to update that for America. And it's like, you like the ending's quite ambiguous. You know, it's just stuff happens, and then people get away with stuff, or do they? Who fucking knows?
It's quite mad. Like, you can imagine that film being like the quintessence, the film that kicked off the 80s, essentially. It's like, how much of that budget just went straight to Pablo Escobar?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't like to say. When's the statute of limitations on these sort of things? But
I mean, we can speculate.
We can.
75%.
Well, Schrader's an interesting director. He's a brilliant writer and also a very interesting man. And by that, I mean, anyway,
so is Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, well, I mean, someone sent me a shot of the very famous Escobar mugshot.
Was it you photoshopped into it?
Not quite yet, but the party does start. But he, and I was struck by how good he looked in it. And I was like, man, he looks fucking brilliant. Because you've got this idea as this very portly, like stupid hair, like he's got his big perm, kind of side pipe.
Just sort of old shirted cunt.
Yeah. And then there he is, grinning like a fucking male model.
Absolutely.
I got you. A very 70s male
You
model.
were watching Narcos, right?
Yeah.
We're going to probably talk about this later, but you know that scene where he gets that photo taken?
Yeah.
Because he's basically taking the piss in a police station, and they're like, this photo would come back to haunt him later, but, and then it's not referenced for fucking episode after episode.
Until he wants to become president of Colombia. It's like, mate, isn't that you? Boys, get the guns out.
But sorry. Every time me and Burns have a conversation, it gets onto Pablo Escobar or something.
Well, let's stop there before we get assassinated. Next question. This is a good one as well. It's from Kieran HD, and it is: do you consider somebody telling you there's a huge twist in a film to be a spoiler for that film? Now, this is where we get into kind of what is spoiler territory, and spoiler territory's gone mad recently because, and I think the internet, as it has with most things, has infected this, where there are now two entrenched positions and no real middle ground.
Like everything.
That is the internet full stop.
Yeah. So there are people who consider like zero tolerance, like they don't want to know the name of a Zelda game. I think someone tweeted the name or put it on NeoGAF of the new Zelda game. They're like, that is a spoiler. And then there are
I don't think titles are spoilers. That's taking it quite
and then
far.
we're going to go on. Jim's going to explain that in a bit. But then we've got the guys who wake up on like Monday morning or whatever and go, I can't believe fucking that happened in Game of Thrones. Oh, come on, lads. Come on. Hey, fuck off.
It's happened to me twice, and
that's your fault. Stay off Twitter.
It is incredibly irritating. But I mean, there is this kind of duality to it where it's just like they've been an arsehole, but you've been an idiot. So I mean, but at the same time, it's like, you're telling somebody you need to avoid spoilers by not going on the internet is kind of like saying like you need to avoid hot dog stands, so don't walk down a street. It's like,
but there's also a time frame for this, isn't there? Like if someone puts a spoiler on for an episode that goes out that night, then you're just being a dick. If you give away, the twist in Sixth Sense, it's like, well, that was released quite a while ago. Like, everybody knows that now.
The two times the Game of Thrones spoilers have happened to me, they were spoiled by people who weren't even watching the show, who were just commenting on the spoiler going around. So it's like
drive-by spoilers.
People who weren't even invested, and it was well before you could have possibly watched it in this country, unless you'd have stayed until like 4 a.m. and watched it illegally before you went to work. Like you would have had to have been like, I was on a train at like 8:30 a.m, kind of like. You can't reasonably expect people to not sort of check their Twitters and stuff.
Did you call him out on it?
Yeah, I did. There was one, like, it was a massive moment in Game of Thrones where for at least like the first few years everyone was just waiting for. And then it happened, and I found out about it happening like the morning, the morning after it had aired in the US, and people were talking about it. And I was like, why the fuck did you, why did you blurt that out? What possible reason could you have for saying that out loud, unguarded? Like, you don't have to be a cunt about it. And I think some people take spoiler culture way too far, but at the same time, like, there's a bit of common sense and a bit of fucking, like, decency.
There is a middle ground.
You just don't be a cock. But
in the old days, we were talking about this before. In the old days, there was only really like a few ways that stuff could get spoiled for you. You say when you were 15 or something. The only way it could get spoiled is if you read Empire and there was something in there. Your older brother or your mate's older brother had seen something in the cinema, came back, and because he was your mate's older brother and by default a cock, just decided that he was going to tell you, and just to be a dick, or there were very few ways. Maybe you'd hear it in the schoolyard or whatever, but now there are so many ways. It really is like you can. Like you were saying, Dave, when you push notifications on your phone. Yeah, so like Android, Liverpool got fucking smashed again.
I avoided the game the whole weekend and then got a beep beep update. It's like, you shithouse.
Which made it worse back in the day when someone actually did do some big spoilers. So Games TM got into a lot of trouble because they put the ending of Knights of the Old Republic into its review. There's apparently a screenshot of the big twist there. And Games Master, I believe, ruined the big twist in the middle of Resident Evil Code Veronica on Dreamcast by showing a picture of Wesker and the faux Spencer Mansion that had been built in the grounds of that Antarctic base, which was a real dick thing to do, seeing as the whole game is built around that twist. And I think one of the things with twists and spoilers is that with spoilers and spoiler culture, if your film is good enough to survive the twist being ruined, then it's probably a very, very
absolutely.
good movie.
You can watch, Fight Club and The Usual Suspects again, and they hold up time and time again. But it is still immensely enjoyable to have that first experience of seeing that film fresh without knowing what's coming.
Yeah.
So I would actually say yes, it is a spoiler for someone to go, oh, there's a huge twist in this film, because then you approach it in a different way. But then I guess a lot of films do that because it gets bums on seats and it is
So what was the thing, Jim?
At the end of the day,
You were saying that someone had spoken to you, or you heard someone about Blair Witch.
Oh yeah.
Which this made me laugh, and then it made me go to a shop and get licensed for a shotgun.
One of my friends, bless him, back in Edinburgh, who is a very lovely man, but he's very into his films, particularly into his horror films, and so the new Blair Witch film was, I believe it was initially marketed as The Woods, not as a Blair Witch film, and it wasn't until like the first screening, or the press screening maybe, I'm not entirely sure in the details, it was revealed to be a Blair Witch movie. And then when those people came out of the theatre, all the kind of posters and everything in the foyer had been changed from The Woods to Blair Witch. So it was like this big kind of social media
Which, if you came out for a piss, might have been quite confusing.
Yeah. So just everyone taking the... Wait, hang on, mate.
which I never do in films, by the way. I make sure I go right before I get in there.
Yeah, I've got Charles Bladder.
I'd rather my bladder exploded.
Mate, that's
than
why you
leave
always
the film.
go for the large drink, innit? So you finish that off and then just use it.
You fucking...
So,
Scotland.
I mean... I used to work in cinemas in Scotland, mate. Fucking worse things than that. So the amount of times I had to like interrupt a blowjob to throw people out, saying,
"What you're right,
yours." I mean, you ran into that one.
Give us a minute. I was gesturing, holding a cock to my face there, if just for those at home. But yeah, so he found out about this. He's a massive horror fan, and so he would have gone to see The Woods anyway. He was aware of it anyway, but most of the planet wasn't, because most people aren't that into horror, so it would have been a niche film otherwise. And he was upset that they'd spoiled the twist, essentially the twist in his mind being that it's a Blair Witch movie, and it's like,
it would have been
that's
cool.
a marketing twist, not a plot twist.
Yeah, it would have been cool to kind of, and I know why people get really het up on it, because they want to feel like they belong to the thing. And I'm not, if I went to, like, if I was at Cannes or I was at any, Sundance or whatever, and I just went in to see a screening of a movie called The Woods, and then in the trailer for Blair Witch is the bit where they they see all the little stick stuff, I'd be like, oh man, this is like a stealth Blair Witch movie. That's very fucking cool. But it would never stop me from seeing if I really wanted to. It would never put me off. It would just be a nice little thing. You know, it's just I don't think that's a problem. It'd be a problem with a movie like Best Laid Plans with Reese Witherspoon, Alessandro Nivola, and Josh Brolin, because that has a very big twist, and a twist that makes sense in the movie. So you can watch it again afterwards, and it's a really good one. And but it's not just he's dead. It's like a proper, when you count back through the movie, the cogs that have turned lead there. It doesn't just happen. So going back through it, it is then enjoyable to see the things you didn't see before. A movie I love, and you, Dave, watched it again after, is Jacob's Ladder, which has an exceptional ending, one of the most famous endings in history.
Jacob's Baby.
It's not his baby. And then you went back through it, though, didn't you? And you thought, well, that kind of...
No, I was actually, when we talk about that, I got confused with Sixth Sense.
Oh, right.
In that conversation, it sounded like I was saying that, but no, a second watch of Jacob's Ladder holds up, whereas a second watch of Sixth Sense does not hold up whatsoever.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense.
Spending the whole time going,
this falls apart on second viewing.
Wait a minute. He's meant to be a ghost.
So his wife he hasn't replied to his wife in 2 years, and they haven't noticed that. That's a bit of a, you let it get away with that, because it's still a fun film. Jurassic Park's one of the best films of all time. You don't want to look too closely at the sheer amount of plot holes in that. This is the most important weekend of our entire thing. Let's send everyone away on vacation. It's vacation except for the owner, but it is the elderly owner. 10 out of 10.
It's not.
The elderly owner, who's essentially Scrooge McDuck.
Big time. But Jacob's Ladder. I
mean, that was originally conceived as a Scrooge McDuck. As
was it? Is that a remake
film? Jurassic Park. No, it was meant to be. It was meant to be DuckTales. It was meant to be. So Spielberg.
You're
was
talking
involved.
shit.
No, Spielberg was involved with Land Before Time.
Yeah,
it was meant to be a crossover.
Yeah, what? He looked at the poster and fuck it.
It was meant to be a crossover between DuckTales and Land Before Time. I swear,
it's the biggest load of fucking shit I've ever heard.
Why.
Get the fuck out.
That's why, the old man, he's walking around with a cane, and he's like, got all the fucking money.
And he does dive into that pool of coins.
Exactly, and one of them can fly a plane.
And then he has a moment where he sits across a big table and discusses how man and chaos theory, and as Scrooge McDuck often did when he wasn't recovering from neck surgery.
I'm saying the concept was
okay, mate.
I played DuckTales on Game Boy this week, and it's really fucking hard.
Hold on. What the fuck are you talking about? Is that why nothing's got done? Because you're like, the trains are fucked, sitting at home wanking and playing Game Boy DuckTales.
I am obviously talking shit, but I did read once, and I believe there is something to this. I'm sure I read once that Land Before Time was developed from the one of the original ideas for Jurassic Park, which was that it was what the film idea that Jurassic Park as an adaptation of the book would eventually turn into. But Spielberg wanted to do a film that was just without dialogue and was just about dinosaurs cutting about in the past. And he wanted to tell a story about...
Is this in his Gaddafi phase?
He wanted to tell a story about migration of those going through a migration. Again, no dialogue, just a film with prehistoric animals, so millions of years before any people existed, and that's eventually what Land Before Time would have been spun out from.
Listen, shush. Right, so next question.
I might have dreamt that, but I'm sure there's something to that.
I think that's a false memory. So Mr. Christer asks, since loads of movies are getting TV adaptations, which film would you actually like to see adapted? So Taken has got it's got a show coming, series. Training Day with Bill Paxton in the Denzel role. Wow.
Lethal Weapon. Telly adaptation. Fucking terrible.
Which, I mean...
Damon Wayans in the.
I believe so. The man who plays Riggs in this, and I don't know his name. He's a handsome dude. But the thing about why Mel Gibson was so perfect as Martin Riggs was that basically any way you could describe Mel Gibson, apart from the Vietnam War thing, Riggs is the same for Mel Gibson. So he's like an extremely attractive, charming, unhinged man who suddenly just does whatever he wants. And you're like, so who am I talking about there? Which one of those?
There's probably a treatment knocking about somewhere for like Lethal Weapon 6, where it turns out he's a massive racist, or I don't know.
I think we'll be cutting that. But yeah, so this is
I'm not suggesting. No, wait. I'm not suggesting anything with that. It was just an off-key joke. Although the Lethal Weapon is an interesting one too. It's Damon Wayans in the Danny Glover role. I mean,
I think so.
I think it's one of the Wayans brothers, isn't it?
Yes,
I'm pretty sure. Anyway, like, me and Richie once did an all-nighter watching Lost. And eating chicken, which is how we came up with ideas. Because like the next morning, you'd be absolutely like sleep-addled and fucked, and your brain would your neurons would just fire in all directions, and sometimes there'll be an idea that's stuck. And, so
are you trying to tell us you're doing a lot of drugs?
No, honestly, I swear to God,
chicken.
I swear to God, all it was is lack of sleep, watching Lost and eating chicken, and it seemed to have the same effect as like doing an all-nighter on fucking GAC or whatever. but we had this idea for doing a sitcom set in Glasgow called Damon's Wayans, and it was about Damon Wayans having to move his family to Glasgow. And that was the sitcom. That was the idea. So it was just like, what if the Wayans family just had to move to Glasgow, and it was about them sort of getting used to life in
cutting about the Eltonic tea cake factory.
Exactly, in Scotland's premier metropolis, and it was all to serve the pun. Damon's Wayans.
Yeah, absolutely. You've completely fucked. Should we actually ask this question? So my one, of course, would be American Psycho. Now, American Psycho, 2000 Guinevere Turner, Mary Harron film is now so tied up with its star that it feels.
Yeah, you could barely, cast someone better for that role.
And there have been other adaptations, but I'm always looking at those guys going. And the thing with Christian Bale is that he had like the teeth and he had the body, and he's a very good looking man. But there's something that he doesn't just look like a catalogue model. He doesn't just,
just
there's something interesting
and,
about. He looks innocent, which is the joke in the book. The joke in the book is it's the boy next door, which is why no one believes, that a lot of these murders, if they did happen, which is still up for interpretation. But he has this. There are moments in it, especially with Gene, where he comes across as a normal person, and he has this kind of faintly bemused look to him in a lot of the scenes where things are happening of his and others' volition, and he's just like kind of enjoying it but can't quite believe himself that it's happening. And Christian Bale brings that boyish kind of look to it while still being incredibly good looking. So Tom Cruise was one of the people that probably would have been in it if it had been made in like any earlier. Leonardo DiCaprio was going to be in it when Oliver Stone was directing it, and you just can't imagine DiCaprio in that role, because even he maybe as he got older, but definitely in 2000 he just looked
he's too sweet looking as opposed to.
But one of the things about the novel American Psycho is that the film doesn't really articulate is how slowly he unravels, and obviously it's because it's completely different, and they were absolutely right to make it the way they did. But what I would like to see if it's a TV show is, over the course of the book, which is about a year and a half, is that he just goes completely to pot, and that's chapters.
So you want a Breaking Bad approach to?
Chapters start in the middle and end
Psycho.
Abruptly. They make no sense. There's run-on sentences for entire pages. And I think they did an amazing job adapting it. I think that you could never adapt a lot of what's in that book.
Oh God! It's when I read that book, I thought this is the most unfilmable book I've ever read. Yeah. So to get anything out of it is really skillful.
But I would like to see that approach in a series. But I do think it's like Brando in The Godfather. It's one of those that when you reread that book, you are seeing Christian Bale. You are hearing Bale's voice as the narrator. Maybe it's different for other people who. So I saw a bit of the movie and I was like, oh, okay. And then I read the book, so suddenly was like looking into it or whatever. And so I read it without Christian Bale's thing, but now it's there. Yeah. So, but a good one that you were talking about, Dave, is The Good Shepherd.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched that film quite recently, and it just felt simultaneously too long and too short, because they had so many story strands and like just massive ideas that were crammed into it. So it runs at like almost
60
3
frames?
hours.
As soon as somebody said it runs at, this is games journalism brain, just hasn't switched off yet. Sorry, carry on.
So it's a bit bloated as a feature film. They should have kind of stripped a few of those elements away, but for a TV series it'd be brilliant because the things that they're investigating are such huge topics that you could run season after season of looking at those things and investigating them, and I think that would work brilliantly over a long series, taking each strand.
You've just got more time in television to build characters as well, to build relationships, to get the audience invested. I don't think I've ever really. I've often thought, actually, with films, even films I really enjoy, that I don't really feel like attached to something that lasts for 2 hours as much as I do something that lasts years. You get
By the end of Breaking Bad, you were like,
exactly.
You feel you've been along for that
leathered
ride.
so much time into that story.
And there's a different rhythm as well, because
Yeah.
if you look at a film and it says it's 5 hours, you'd be like, no fucking way am I watching that. But you would sit down and
Dillman.
somehow watch 8 hours of TV.
You happily watch 5 hours of telly because
Yeah.
it's that bite size. It's more digestible, but it's that is weird, that, isn't it? Because you can happily tan a whole box set, but like Ben-Hur feels really, really difficult
Yeah,
to
but
watch.
that's because
I mean, that's mainly because
It's the rhythm of the storytelling and just...
with Breaking Bad,
Absolutely.
I only just finished it recently, so I'm that guy. But it was the TV show that I thought was closest in, not really in form, but in feeling and in style and in aesthetic in a lot of ways, to a television adaptation of The Godfather. So in terms of getting attached to characters, like, yeah, they had maybe 9 hours or something across 3 movies to make you feel something for Michael Corleone. But they also made you feel something about Don Corleone, Vito Corleone. And I think even though he is a monster, that when he dies, people are sad because because the performance is so good, the writing's so good, the rhythm is so good that you're like, oh, he's playing with his grandchild when he dies. It's like, that's not something.
It's a bit like Chancellor Gowron in Deep Space Nine.
We're not getting on that. We'll get onto that in a moment. But with
that's a spoiler.
with Breaking
Show's
Bad,
20 years old, lads. It's all right.
with Breaking Bad, I came to it late. I watched that first season not as long as the other ones, and it appeared on Channel 5 or whatever, and I was like, oh, okay, but a great hook. But then as those seasons went on, and this is not new news to anyone who's seen it, is that there is a very Michael Corleone thing about Walter, and it is essentially about paving the road to hell. Like, that's what the show and that film is
just
about.
that death by 1,000 little paper cuts of just making a little compromise here, another one here, and then suddenly you set yourself onto a path that you suddenly can't get off.
And I thought it was just absolutely amazing in that regard. And again, a lot of it's the casting. So I think Narcos is really well casted, for example. I really like
Brilliant cast,
the main dude, the American dude. Was his name Boyd? Maybe.
Yeah. I like his moustache.
Yeah, great moustache. His wife is incredibly well cast.
Yeah.
It would have been very easy to be like, oh well, she's just the kind of, I know some of it's based in history, but it'd been like, oh, it's it'd be easy to have like a ditzy blonde who is out there and is just like causing trouble for him, but she gives as good as she gets. In that regard, and I think she's incredibly well cast. And I also think that the police colonel who ends up taking Escobar on and calls him directly in one of the episodes and says he knows where his mum and fat kid is, which is the most direct threat you could ever make, really. And like, he's got this incredible steely intensity where he's just like torturing, he's waterboarding people, he's torturing people, he's throwing hot cups of coffee in people's faces. You're like, is this like who's the baddie here? Like, I mean, Pablo's playing golf now. Like, he's not throwing hot cups of coffee in people's face. He will be later, but that's not now.
And that's one of the great things about Narcos is, and about a lot of shows really, Deep Space Nine included, that you really don't know who the baddies are.
That's more interesting. It's more true to life when you get that people, because no one is purely evil and no one is purely good, and it's much more interesting when you see your good characters do terrible things and your bad characters do something nice, and it muddies the water and makes it a lot more interesting to watch.
When you can see everyone's point. I mean,
that's the best writing, when you can see.
You can't really. I mean, there's that. There's a wonderful original series Star Trek episode. I can't remember the fucking name of it now, but basically,
Load of shite.
there is a society where there are two warring cities, and they fight the war as a computer simulation. So no property
I've
gets
seen this, actually.
no property gets damaged. And so basically you get a report, and like this section of the city was bombed at this time, so whoever was there at the time is dead, and those people have to voluntarily walk into a disintegration chamber. So there's a way of prolonging the war by agreement, so that is you scoring the points, but you don't cause the massive destruction of property.
So it's a tactical nuclear weapon.
It doesn't cost any money. So it's like it's a war without any kind of remorse.
It's a gentleman's agreement of a war.
Exactly. But it was a great thing to, and there's this wonderful moment where Spock's like, no, it's got a certain logic to it. You can see the point. I'm glad you agree, Spock. And he's like, it didn't say I fucking agreed, mate.
Yeah.
I believe was the original quote. But yeah, and that's, I mean, as you say, that is great writing when something is so beyond the pale, but you can actually. You can see how people got there. You can really think. Well, actually, Pablo Escobar grew up in let's face it, a shithole.
Yeah.
And he was very poor.
Poverty. And I think with Narcos, with Breaking Bad, and with The Godfather, with all the good shows like that, which have violence, not just conflict at their core, is that what makes them really good is that you get the Rubicon moment. So you get the moment where they completely cross the line. So in The Godfather, it is... So at the end, you're talking about seeing people's point of views. In the first Godfather movie, you can see Philip Tatalia's point. Like... You're getting too powerful, and you won't allow us to use our resources. So you can see the point there. You can see the rest of the Five family. You can see their point. The issue is they didn't finish the job when they went for the assassination of Don Corleone. Michael Corleone only gets fucked over.
Like the first Gulf War, innit? They just didn't press the Baghdad.
Michael Corleone's mistake is killing his brother.
Yeah.
Because in doing so, his brother is no threat, and that's when the power, the moral event horizon, as I believe it's called on the TV tropes.
Shit.
And in Breaking Bad, Walter crosses it a few times. He pops out to the shops from it. But the one is where he allows Jesse's girlfriend, Jennifer Jones. Jessica Jones, Jennifer Jones, someone else entirely. He allows his girlfriend to die, to overdose in front of him, and that's just the first of very many. And so, but you can kind of see his point. Like she is going to lead Jesse into a very... So even though it's completely and utterly wrong, if you sat down with a very Spock mind on it and went, I need this man for me and mine, and if I don't do this, that will all crumble. And
in fact, tying it to the TV adaptations, Fargo is very much like that in the first season. You're still rooting for Martin, Thingy's character. Yeah, he continually doing terrible things, really awful things, but you're still hoping that he just gets away with it.
And that's why I think that Training Day as an adaptation probably won't work. Training Day works as a movie because the point is it's set in a fucking day, and you get those moments where they cross over the Rubicon, or they make the mistake that they shouldn't have done, and it's packaged so incredibly well in that movie. I don't think that movie's best actor is I'm not sure if it's a great performance, but at the same time, Training Day works because it is set over the course of a day. The clues in the title, and the way that they package it all together.
Is it?
Yeah. So pretty much he gets up in the morning. By the end of it, everyone's dead. So just another day.
Spoiler.
But yeah, so that's
like Pablo Escobar's.
One of the things. The last one. So we talked about this a lot the other day, and we'll bring up some of the same points, and not in the podcast, but just amongst ourselves. Was The Shining. So
The
Shining, not if you want to get sued. The Shining is a movie which I love, which I saw for the first time at uni in halls on a small television, and I was like, okay, it's cool, it's interesting, I like the fucking soundtrack. But when it really got me was when I was seeing it projected, and it's there's a fucking Kubrick movie. It needs to envelop you when you feel like you're being pulled through the house on that fucking Steadicam constantly. And but that got like a 2 or 3 part adaptation by Stephen King, I think. Cause,
Yeah, it's the one that
you
he
said,
prefers.
Dave, that you and Stephen King are the two people.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's a visually, it's an absolutely stunning film. It's great, but I just feel it's missing 1 or 2 key scenes where you see Jack Nicholson's character unravel a bit more. For me, he seems to go from kind of like he seems to go straight to crazy straight away. And I like the, obviously he's not on the scale of Breaking Bad because you've got so many hours to do it in, but I like that little thread just being pulled and seeing someone come apart at the seams. But you made an interesting point about that though,
Yeah, so I think it was Ebert, I'm not sure. So he's one of the, whoever said that they didn't like the casting because Jack Nicholson was Jack Nicholson in it, and he's got that very that wolfish grin, and you couldn't really see how he was going to, as you say, go from being like a doting family man into this. But I think one of the things that colours The Shining retroactively makes it maybe a little bit worse for newer viewers is that if you think about the 70s as a decade, there was no Witches of Eastwick Jack Nicholson, there was no Joker Jack Nicholson, there was no there was a lot of shit-eating grins Jack Nicholson.
There was no Drill.
There was no Drill, there was no Jack Nicholson in Wolf, there was no Jack Nicholson in Mars Attacks, there's no Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson. There was, before that, there was Easy Rider, there was...
Which is a brilliant film.
Yeah, there was 5 Easy Pieces. There was The Last Detail.
It's a hell of a
there
CV, isn't it?
And where the character Jack Nicholson, the star Jack Nicholson played into a lot of that because that's what made him so famous. But there's Cuckoo's Nest Jack Nicholson, right? But in 1980, there wasn't any of that real pantomime villain stuff. Really, there was a lot of just very damaged youngish men who, for whatever reasons, were railing against their class or their upbringing or had various problems of sorts, and that was his thing. In all those movies, he goes against the thing which he's been bequeathed. So in The Last Detail, he's got to escort Randy Quaid, I think, to like a naval prison for something, and in the end they just take him out on the booze because they're like, we're not sending him to jail without this and that. There's a great movie by Hal Ashby. And you think of 5 Easy Pieces, like he's a pianist, and that's the 5.
He's a what?
A pianist. Who, the 5 Easy Pieces, the title is the pieces. And all of that, and of course Chinatown, Cuckoo's Nest, they don't need much explanation there. Whereas in The Shining, I do kind of agree with a different actor. I think the one that the critic venture was maybe Ryan O'Neill, someone who looks a bit more like a normal guy that isn't, because when Jack Nicholson smiles, you're like, there it is. Whereas Ryan O'Neill's just kind of the guy from Love Story. So I completely get that, but I do think
who else is just like a normal guy?
Not you,
Colin Firth
in The Shining.
Yeah,
I'd watch it.
I'd
fucking watch it.
You watch it. I mean, he wouldn't smash the door in, would he? He'd just
terribly sorry.
Yeah.
Well, you've worked with old Colin, haven't you, Dave? So on Gambit.
Yes, bits on that.
Yeah. Good lad, is he?
Lovely chap. Yeah.
A lot of teas and bowler hats and that.
I'm sure he's like that off screen as well. Yeah.
Cameron Diaz was there, wasn't she, Dave?
Cameron Diaz
Shut the fuck up, Dave.
Technically asked me to go to Mexico with her. It's not exactly true. She went, I'm going to Mexico. Who wants to come? And as far as I'm concerned, that is an invite to Mexico from Cameron Diaz. That's the.
I don't know, mate.
I'm going to twist it that way, and that's the way I'm going to say it.
I mean, if I'm at a bar, I'm like, I'm going to the bar. Who wants to come? Like, I'm not going to say no.
There you go. So technically, I turned down a trip to Mexico with Cameron Diaz. Is that how we're going to?
Wow, Dave.
It just makes me an idiot.
Yeah, you've completely fucked on. So
I do like this idea though of you just sort of following her to the airport and that, and eventually she's just like, "Sorry, who are you?"
Yeah. Aren't you the guy that keeps on like following?
Do you not
me
remember
around?
we were squashed in half a fake car and you said I'm going to Mexico? Well, I took that literally.
Yeah. Sorry, it was a line of dialogue. Oh, great. So the last question, also a great one, is about trailers, and this is by Tom Watton, and it is: what is the best trailer for worst film?
Wow. I mean, there's so many.
And I love trailers.
There's so many
I'm
great
obsessed with
trailers for shit films.
Yeah, but I'm talking about all-time fucking stinkers here. I'm not talking about Lethal Weapon 4, okay?
Well, I wouldn't say The Matrix Reloaded is necessarily that much of a...
When was the last time you saw it?
Okay,
Matrix Reloaded.
I think I've seen it twice.
It's an all-time
Yeah.
stinker.
I'm just kind of refusing to believe, because the first one is so good.
Classic
You're like,
shit film.
there
With a
must be
couple of good
something in
bits,
it.
though, innit?
Yeah, we should have answered that in the last one.
Yeah, that's definitely a scene a great scene in a bad film is the motorway.
Oh
Scene
man,
in
so they
Matrix
built
Reloaded.
it. They built their bloody soundstage that one.
Actual
No,
motorway.
no, just
And it got it's got Bros in it, isn't it? The Bros twins. Don't they play the
is
dreadlock
it them?
villains?
I don't think it is them.
Isn't it them?
Are you getting confused with Blade 2?
Might be.
Yeah.
You sure it's
Because
not?
Luke Goss is in that.
Is
isn't
it not the Bros people?
No.
Fucking sure.
I
it
don't
is,
think
mate.
it is.
Fucking sure it is.
All right, we'll look into it. Stop being a twat. Right. So yeah. So someone on in the list of answers has got toys.
Fucking leave this outfit, and then you won't have an editor. You can't.
Yeah. Hello. Is that my good friend John Young, who's also done editing work for Emeritus Theo? Yeah, pop in, mate. We got a job for you.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Prometheus. That's one that Burns likes to go on about.
Oh, every time I'm reminded of Prometheus, I get really angry.
It's probably maybe the most disappointed or second most disappointed I've been in a film from build up to actually seeing it and then going like, oh, that was not what I wanted at all. The other one being the film Dune, which is...
You film what?
Dune?
Everyone always has trouble when I say
Dune?
this. Dune. Anyway.
I'm worried about saying that now. Dune.
Yeah,
Dune.
that one. D-U-N-E.
Frank Herbert's
Yes,
famous novel adapted by David Lynch.
Adapted by one of my favourite directors of all time. And I had it there and I was like, I'm not watching it until I've read the book. And I finished the book and then I put the DVD straight on and I watched 2.5 hours of it and then went, I have no fucking idea what just happened in that film. And I've literally just finished the book.
One of the greatest, I'm quite a visionary director. One of the greatest of his generation, and
Strong hair game as well.
Utterly fucked it.
Well, Dino De Laurentiis and
I mean, he is one of my favourite filmmakers. I love practically everything he's ever put his hand to, but that is...
He fucked it
And
so
I love
much.
Carl
He didn't want
Claflin
anyone,
as well.
He didn't want anyone to know he'd put his hand to it, did he? It was an
There's
Alan
also
Smithy
a
film.
fantastic film, Jodorowsky's Dune, which is where he puts together this absolutely mad pitch to make the film and gets on all these incredible artists and Mick Jagger and everyone. He's got this and these incredible diagrams and stuff. But then Giger's involved, and that who then of course goes on to do Alien. And you actually there's like a book that he made as a pitch essentially, which if you look at it and then look at the science fiction films that come after it, it's essentially a how-to guide for all that. You get the aliens. The Geiger aliens from that. You'll also get, I think there's some Blade Runner stuff that spun off from it, and it's really fascinating, a really good documentary and he's also, they interview him years later after David Lynch has done it, he goes, and he got it, and I couldn't believe it, he's one of my favourite filmmakers, and he did it, and then there's a pause, and he just goes, and it was rubbish.
But I think with Prometheus, when I first heard that it was going to happen, it was going to be an Alien prequel shot predominantly in 3D.
It's fucking Ridley Scott's Dune, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to be like, no, I said it's going to be shite. Then some of the stuff started to roll in, some production stuff, and there's one thing you can't knock on it, is the production value.
Oh God, it looks incredible.
The look of it.
The sets, the cinematography all look
the
brilliant.
Sound of it. And then, so where I start to get really excited, and this is the trailer stuff, is where it starts, the international trailer, where you see Fifield's helmet, where the black goo gets splashed onto it and it melts and like sticks to his skull, and he's screaming when he opens his mouth. It's harrowing. And I was like, oh, this is what an alien, even if there's no direct alien in it, which it kind of was at the end, this is what it should feel like, mad kind of body horror. And I thought that was incredible, and it also reused that kind of like siren horn noise from the original trailer for Alien, which I would say the trailer for the original Alien is pretty much the start or near the start of the of modern trailer culture. Before, it used to just be the film on fast forward for like 4 or 5 minutes. The trailer for Apocalypse Now is unreal. You're like, what? Star Wars was the one that you were saying, Jim, that's just Charlton Heston just laughing in a variety of locations.
Mate, the trailer for Planet of the Apes is a PowerPoint presentation. I swear to fuck. It's Charlton Heston like on set going, hello.
Which works for Hitchcock with
I love
Psycho.
those ones. Yeah, fantastic.
But it's
I hate modern day trailers though. I hate being essentially told everything that's going to happen in the movie
Yeah.
You're giving it all straight away, and it's just I actually avoid them as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, I watched the trailer for Don't Breathe the other day, having really been suckered by the concept, like the inversion of that home invasion genre that people really like. And then someone, a Guardian film critic, had said that don't anyone spoil the ending. I'm like, okay, no more reviews. I'm just going to watch the trailer, then maybe going to see it, and there it is. Right there and then. And you're like, this movie lives and dies on the fact that apparently there's very little dialogue in the movie. And it lives and dies on the fact that you'll have to unravel the tricks and traps of this guy's house. And he's a blind man. This is the thing. So you break into a blind man's house, and then the moral imperative switches. So it's pretty bad trying to steal from a blind man. You know, but then you break into his house and you're like, oh, good. Right. It's gone very hostile in here, apparently. And so, and you know, with all the locked doors and the low lighting in the I don't know what the actual twist is, but yeah, the studio. I know the studio has to get people in, but don't be a fucking dick about it. I'll tell you one thing though about spoiler culture, about trailers. So people have been talking about this a lot. T2's trailer that gives away the game that Arnie is in fact a good Terminator. Right, this time he's back for good. You know, and people get really upset about that, going, they ruined it. It's like, if you watched Terminator 2 and you were over 15 years old, you would know that he is not the bad Terminator. He goes into a bar and Bad to the Bone starts playing. And someone said on Twitter, it's like, in the first Terminator movie, he uses the sunglasses to hide disfigurement. And he cuts his hair to avoid being recognised by the police. Because at the start of the Terminator, he's got that floppy Arnie in the kind of 70s and early 80s look. And he's much bigger in the original Terminator. Like, Simon Miller gets very upset about this. But when you watch T2, the mood is completely different. Do you really believe that when Rob Patrick beams in with the fucking steely skull eyes and fucking blaring...
He's the good guy.
Yeah, and he runs up and just fucking kills a police officer. You're like, he's been sent... That's Kyle Reese too. You're like... Have you seen how he talks to people? Like, there's a big guy on a bike. Like, I'm going to kill everyone in this house later on. So I think that people saying that T2's marketing ruined the twist. Yeah, when he gets out of the lift and says, come on, and Sarah Connor, like, you know, it just melts basically. And he says, come on, if you want to live.
I don't think that was meant to be a mystery for the audience.
Well, Cameron says that originally it was, but I just think it was one of those productions where there was no way that was it Mario Casar and the other guys from Kuroko, they needed to sell that movie because they gave Arnie a plane. And it cost
what a contract. I want to be signing contracts.
So, yeah.
What did he have at F40? What was it you had?
Didn't get a Learjet, some description, or a G, one of those. But yeah, so...
Wonderful fucking film, though.
T2 gets worse for me on repeat viewings.
Oh, no.
I'm not saying it's bad, but a long time ago...
You're joking.
A long time ago,
You're joking.
Terminator 2 was, in my eyes, better than the original. And
it is.
Watch it again. T2 just has so... I know it's the 90s, but you're watching it now going, oh yeah, it's got a Public Enemy t-shirt on. Oh yeah, you know, why does all this... Why does Bad to the Bone play? Why does he take the sunglasses? And like he wears, like this guy saying on Twitter, it's like in the original he does it to hide disfigurement. In this one he just does it for branding, to look cool. And you're like, yeah. And the movie as it goes on I do really, really like it. But I just think that original movie, that fucking police station scene scares the shit out of me. Because Arnie's so much bigger in the frame than in T2. He's so much bigger. When he walks in, he's got that fucking massive shotgun. And he's just holding it with one arm. And he gets shot and just blows. And the way it's shot, and that soundtrack's perfect. That kind of, you know, Terminator. Yeah. And as Kari says, he just does not stop. And that's the best thing about the Terminator. Is the ante just keeps on getting up. So he has a car crash to begin with, and then they're like, oh, we're never going to survive that. He's gone. Then he shoots up an entire police station and no one can stop him. And then he's on a motorbike and gets blown up, and you're like, oh. Then he's in a truck. And then the truck fucking, and he gets run over by a truck or whatever, and he gets in the truck and driving after, then he gets exploded. And then you're like, oh, it's fine now. And then he gets out of the fire as just chrome, you know, death rendered in chrome, I think James Cameron's thing was. So then you put him in a crusher, and he only just dies then. Like, because he's just about... And so the movie keeps on going up and up through the nightmare stages of, this is a bit odd. Why would there be a metallic man from the future? So, no, he's definitely coming. oh no, why am I here? It's got a very hazy night movie dream feel about some of it. It's really good. Terminator, on the other hand, is about listening to Guns N' Roses, having a stepdad called Todd, and using a minigun but not fucking killing anyone.
Well, there you go. So Special Gun and Jim Burns and Dave are now hiring because we've lost one of our staff in week 2.
We don't have any stuff. So that's the end of the podcast. That's the end of the chat. Thanks for on that note. Thanks for listening. We'll put a call out again. We'll also say so we want to explain that we are we're doing a production company, so that's why maybe some YouTube stuff is a little bit slow because it's not our main focus, but we still want to do a lot of really cool stuff in everything that we do. So just keep an eye out.
Yeah,
Stingray.
And remember, if a machine can learn the value of life, maybe we can too.
On that note,
It's fucking brilliant.
The thumbs up is the best thing.
No, that is brilliant.
Before we go, the thumbs up in T2 is the only way that a lot of dads can bond with their sons because men aren't allowed to talk about feelings. So it's everyone's sitting there going. Yeah, everyone's that's their son. Yeah, sorry, it's a bit stuffy in there. Yeah, get me a beer, will you, lad? Yeah, that robot when he had that big gun, that was good, wasn't it? That was good. Anyway,
I think my favourite bit in T2, just before we go, is when he picks up the toddler and just looks at it. And what the fuck is this?
Exactly. That's me.
I mean, I was going to say that's your attitude.
Yeah.
Uncle Bob
to life, I think. They're not just children.
All right, cheers for listening.
Right.
We will be back.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you for listening. Bye.